Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca Hollenby and I'll be taking you through the EPA process, including what to expect from us and when. Also the EPA Preparation and Assessment Tool, how to access it and the support we have available within it for yourselves and your learners once they are registered for EPA. Firstly, make sure you have a copy of the updated 8 Steps Guide as shown on screen, as this is a great interactive document and we will ensure that it is sent out alongside today's presentation. I will also attach a step-by-step booking guide for War Garden in case this is a new platform for yourselves, as well as an EPA portal user guide to support you as you're being asked to upload your gateway evidence. Your first step in the process is to register your learners for EPA on War Garden. This will incur a £25 registration fee. However, this is then the only cost you'll be charged until you have completed all of your aspects of EPA. We will then invoice you the remaining fee once we have uploaded the final grade for your learner. This final grade will be shown in War Garden once confirmed. This could take up to 20 days. The EPA registration will require you to complete information including the apprentice's name, current employer, very importantly, their unique learner number, as we are unable to claim their overarching certificate from the IFTA without this, alongside their ILR start and planned end date. Once you have registered your learner, within 3 days you will get an email from our EPA team with access to our EPA Preparation and Assessment Tool, and I will go over this slide shortly. When you are ready to book your EPA, once your learner has completed their on-programme learning, you will need to make a booking on War Garden. You should begin this process approximately 3 months before the planned EPA date. Within War Garden, you will select to make an on-demand booking. Here you will be asked to suggest a date and a time where you would like the EPA event to occur. This is your preferred date and a date when you will require independent endpoint assessor assessment. So therefore that could be a practical observation, a skills test or a presentation. If within your standard you have a knowledge test element, you will book this through Secura/Evolve separately once it has been confirmed your learners are through Gateway. This type of assessment is on demand through our Evolve platform and you will need to give us 5 days notice before sitting the assessment. However, the test will sit live 30 days after your intended test date. You will also be able to see a confirmed grade for the knowledge test within War Garden the following day. As you work through your EPA booking request, we need to capture from you all the information required for us to deliver your EPA. This includes the learner's employer details, including their contact name, telephone number, address and postcode. Alongside this, the detail where the EPA event will be held. Even if this is a remote assessment, we will need to know that address. And also the contact for EPA on the day. All this information is referred to in the booking guide as the supplementary information. If you have been asked to complete or amend this from our EPA team, the booking guide will show you how. If when you come to make your initial booking, you do not have all this information to hand, it can be added at a later date. However, your learner will not progress to the next stage until all this information has been captured. This is currently an area where learners are getting stuck in the process. Should you have any questions on this, please do ask a question at the end or leave your comments in the Q&A box and we will pick it up with you separately. If all this information has been captured, within 5 days, your learners will begin to appear within your EPA portal, where you will be required to upload all your gateway documents, including their signed declaration agreement, their functional skills certificates, or evidence of any exemptions, and any mandated qualifications if the standards requires it. You can find access to these mandated recording forms either on the City and Guilds website, in the EPA portal, or on the EPA Preparation Tool. City and Guilds will then undertake a gateway check on your learners, which could take up to 10 days, at which point, if your learners are successfully through and confirmed through Gateway, you will be notified of this and your learners will move across to the booking team. From here, as mentioned previously, you can now begin to book and sit any knowledge test. Once the booking is confirmed, we will send you out a booking confirmation for you to sign and date and return back to the EPA team. If you have a method of remote assessment within your EPA, the booking confirmation will also include the GoToMeeting link for this aspect of remote assessment for yourselves and the learner to register on prior to the date. 2 weeks before any confirmed independent endpoint assessment, we will need uploaded into the EPA portal the showcase portfolio, presentation, evidence of work uploaded to be sent to the IEPA 2 weeks before the confirmed date. Alongside this, you will also be required to upload a signed declaration form of authenticity for that piece of work. This recording form is also found in the recording pack mentioned previously. Upon completion of all aspects of EPA, the results for the learner will show in War Garden within 20 days. Should your learner have failed any aspects of their EPA, a written failure document will be sent via email to the original EPA booking, to the person who made the original EPA booking. It will highlight the areas that incurred the fail to allow you to reassess those areas and book in for a resit. Should your learner be successful, we will issue you a record of achievement confirming the outcome and the grade of that learner, and request the overarching apprenticeship certificate from the IFTA, which will be sent to the employer's address. As mentioned earlier, as soon as your learners are registered with EPA, as a centre you will be given access to the EPA preparation and assessment materials we have available on our Smart Screen site. This access will be sent to the user who made the first booking for EPA against that standard. On here are a wide range of support materials and exemplars to ensure your learners know what to expect from the endpoint assessment. These include the assessment plaque, which breaks down the assessment methods, the grade boundaries, and how each assessment will be assessed, or the recording form documents, skill scans to make sure the learners can map their job to the standard, exemplar professional discussions and interview techniques, sample knowledge test, examples and guidance on how to build the best portfolio showcase. Alongside that, very importantly, a lead independent end assessor report, which looks back at EPAs over the last 3 to 6 months, showing best practice and where performance could have been improved. The support within the EPA Preparation Tool is fantastic. Therefore, if you're having any issues accessing it, please do get in contact with us separately and we can put this up with you. So finally, as an overview to what has been discussed, please do remember we need 7 weeks notice of your preferred EPA date. This is the date when you're requiring IEPA, Independent Endpoint Assessor activity, and any knowledge test can be sat before this as long as your learner is confirmed through Gateway. We have also seen centres really benefit from using one email address throughout their EPA bookings. For example, epa@thebestprovider.com. This allows us to ensure all booking confirmations, dates and correspondence can be directed into your business. However, it can be picked up from whoever in that business needs to know that information. If you have any questions on this or would like to know how to do this, please do get in contact with us. To end, here is a list of contacts for all support areas across EPA. However, my email is on the front page of this slide, so if you do have any questions, please do feel free to email me. Thank you.
So now let's look at the hospitality standards. I'm Amelia Bodle and I'm the Hospitality and Catering Technical Advisor. Today we'll cover the basic gateway requirements and EPA resources and processes for Commis chef, chef de partie, team member and hospitality supervisor. All of the hospitality standards are a minimum of 366 days on programme, so your apprentice cannot go through Gateway until after this point. After this time, you should undertake the Gateway meeting and ensure you get the Gateway Declaration signed. This can be found in the recording forms documents on any of the apprenticeship web pages. You must also ensure you have the relevant Maths and English certificates, as well as for Commis Chef and team member evidence of both the attempts at Level 2 for Maths and English. Additional gateway requirements are needed for all the hospitality standards. The one additional piece of evidence common across the standards is a 2-week work schedule, or rota. This allows the independent endpoint assessor to discuss when the best time for carrying out the practical observation in the workplace may be. They do this during the initial meeting. For team member and hospitality supervisor, you must also upload the business project proposal, which is 200 to 300 words. The independent endpoint assessor can then review this before the initial meeting. For hospitality team member only, a business operations brief is also required. The brief needs to be an A4 page explaining the apprentice's job role within the organisation they work in, and then how that organisation fits into the wider hospitality industry. We do advise you use the recording form packs on the web pages for team member and hospitality supervisor. Moving on to Commis Chef and Chef de Partie, we also need uploading to the EPA portal the recipe log reference sheets and all the recipes which support this. Each recipe must contain a method, a time plan, which can be higher level, for example 20 minutes prep time and 30 minutes cook time. Each recipe must also contain food safety considerations, as well as a photograph of the apprentice's actual dish that they prepared and cooked. For Chef de Partie, we also need uploading at Gateway the 3 courses of the 3-course menu, so the independent endpoint assessor can make their selections at the initial meeting. This 3-course menu needs to include full recipes and costings. All hospitality standards endpoint assessment processes start with an initial meeting. This is carried out remotely by all parties accessing a conference call. It is important that both the apprentice and the employer, or someone who can make a decision when the practical observation can take place, is present. At the initial meeting for Commis Chef and Chef de Partie, the date for the practical observation is agreed, as well as a proposed date for the professional discussion. Also, any security or booking in arrangements the endpoint assessor needs to be aware of. Then for Commis Chef, the endpoint assessor will agree the culinary challenge dishes. There is an expectation that the apprentice will have an idea of what their main course will be, which meets the criteria in the endpoint assessment pack, and that is also a dish from the organisation's menu where they work. The independent endpoint assessor will then allocate the base dessert to the apprentice, so that could perhaps be a paste dish or a hot dessert, for example. The apprentice then has time after the initial meeting and before the culinary challenge to carry out research and decide which type of paste dessert would suit their brand standard. Further details of this can be found in the EPA pack for Commis Chef. For Chef de Partie, the independent endpoint assessor decides which of the 3 starters, mains and desserts the apprentice will cook as a 3-course menu for 2 people. Again, the exact requirements of the criteria that needs to be met is found in the Chef de Partie endpoint assessment pack. At the initial meeting for team member and hospitality supervisor, the date for the practical observation, the proposed date for the professional discussion, and any security or booking in arrangements the endpoint assessor needs to be made aware of are discussed. Then, specific to these 2 standards, the business project proposal is discussed, and the decision to accept or refuse is made by the independent endpoint assessor. If it is refused, the apprentice has 7 days to complete another and submit it by yourselves to the EPA portal. If agreed, then a mutual date is set whereby the apprentice will need to complete the actual business project by. Please be aware, the business project must not be started prior to the acceptance of the business project proposal at the initial meeting. During the initial meeting, the endpoint assessor will also discuss with the apprentice and the employer any brand standards they need to be aware of. After the initial meeting for Commis Chef and Chef de Partie, we tend to undertake the Culinary Challenge. We can do this either at the college, if you're a college-based provider, or at a suitable venue of your choice, or at the employer's if it is undertaken in a closed-down section of the kitchen so that the apprentice isn't disturbed. If you have a number of apprentices all being put through endpoint assessment at any one time, we can undertake 4 apprentices to 1 endpoint assessor for the Culinary Challenge. The practical observation must be carried out at the apprentice's workplace. The professional discussion topics are issued to the apprentice with at least 5 days' notice so that they can prepare for their professional discussion. These discussions do tend to take place via a recorded meeting or webinar, which the EPA team will provide you with details of how to access. It is not necessary for the employer to be present. For both Commis Chef and Chef de Partie, the recipe logs form part of the discussion. For team member and hospitality supervisor, the assessments all occur in the same order. The business project is assessed first. This has to be uploaded by yourselves to the EPA portal at the time agreed in the initial meeting. After the business project has been completed and assessed, the practical observation then takes place. And finally, the last assessment is the professional discussion. For team member, the business project is discussed as part of the professional discussion, and then the rest of the professional discussion will take place. For hospitality supervisor, a presentation must also take place. So initially the presentation will take place, and then a short break could occur, and then the final professional discussion will be completed. For all of the hospitality standards, the Evolve exam can be administered by yourselves. It can be undertaken at any point after you have received the booking confirmation. Once booked, it cannot be sat for 5 days, but then stays open for 30 days after the date it is planned to occur. This is the same for the first sitting and any resits. Now let's have a look at all the EPA resources we have available across the hospitality standards, as well as some hints and tips to ensure your apprentices progress smoothly through EPA. Rebecca talked earlier about the EPA Preparation Tool. This is where you can find all the valuable resources you need to ensure your apprentice is ready for EPA. The assessment guidance section at the top contains the EPA handbook, assessment pack and passwords, as well as the mock paper and the customer report. The middle tab contains exemplar materials, which include examples of pass and distinction business projects for team member, as well as individual explanation of all the assessment methods. These are split into useful 1 or 2 page documents for apprentices, and then more in-depth explanations for the tutors. They also include checklists and reports similar to the ones the independent endpoint assessor will use, so you can ensure you carry out mock assessments. Finally, in the bottom is the EPA Preparation Tool. It is essential to practice all assessments with the apprentices. We would advise you carry out mock assessments for all the observations. So for Commis Chef and Chef de Partie, both the Culinary Challenge and the practical observation, and for team member and hospitality supervisor, the practical observation. As I said earlier, the exemplar materials contain checklists which have the pass and distinction criteria on them, so you can easily use the same process as our independent endpoint assessors. It may also help if you get a colleague or your IQA to pretend to be the independent endpoint assessor, as you can replicate the unfamiliar person assessing the apprentice. Professional discussions are not something generally our apprentices like, so practicing this skill will make them feel much more at ease when the final assessment takes place. It is useful to also record your mock professional discussions, as often we think we've said something when actually we didn't. You can then play back the recording to the apprentice, stopping at relevant parts to highlight where they could improve grades or indeed where they may have met distinction criteria. Please ensure the apprentices have the grading criteria and understand how to achieve it. As previously advised, the professional discussion topics will be sent to the apprentice at least 5 days before the professional discussion takes place. If you have the time, this is an ideal opportunity to expand upon those topic areas with your apprentice and support them with making notes in preparation for the professional discussion. Please encourage them to take any evidence they feel is relevant to the professional discussion, for example business projects for team member and hospitality supervisor, or recipe logs for Commis chef and chef de partie. It is important that you use the EPA handbook to teach all of the knowledge for the online test. As this test covers knowledge across all of the standard, it is imperative that the apprentice carries out revision. There is one mock test per standard. Should you wish, you could always develop more by using our mock test as a guide and creating further questions using the handbook to question other topic areas. For example, for Commis chef, we ask a question about a cut of meat and there is a photograph of a fillet and the apprentices are given 4 options as to what cut it is. You could easily start your test with another of the same type of questions, asking a question about the other meat cuts which are found in the handbook. Some of the questions use words such as main, first and best. These are in bold on the live test. It would be helpful if you could highlight with your apprentices what these terms mean to ensure they select the correct answer in the live test. There are also some statement questions where the apprentice needs to select the correct statements. These also need practicing and reading carefully. It is imperative that the apprentice understands the assessment criteria for both pass and distinction. Not all distinction criteria are an extension of the pass criteria, so do please ensure that you discuss and explain each one carefully to your apprentices. We advise that you use our recording form templates for the business project proposal and indeed the business project. These can be found on the EPA Preparation Tool or on the website under the relevant standard. We also advise that you plan a mock business project. You could use a similar idea for a number of apprentices and also yourselves get used to then using the grading criteria to support with your own understanding. Please do ensure you check the apprentice's business project to ensure they have met the pass criteria prior to uploading this to the EPA portal. It's also a good idea to talk to them about the level of their business project. We have noticed a number of apprentices who have been promoted whilst working towards the standards. However, if they are working towards a team member standard, they do need to ensure the business project is at that level and it is not overcomplicated, as otherwise the word count will be exceeded. There's quite a substantial difference between the word count for team member and hospitality supervisor. On all occasions, the business project must be relevant to the employer and the apprentice, so please ensure the idea comes from the apprentice and that you don't guide the whole cohort to create a business project which is very similar. There are a number of points to consider about EPA across all of the hospitality standards. An apprentice who passes the Evolve test cannot resit to gain a better grade, and this is the same for all of the assessments within the hospitality standards. Should the apprentice fail two or more of the component parts of endpoint assessment, for example the test and the practical observation, they should then undertake a period of learning with the training provider before any further resits occur. The grades for the hospitality standards are capped at a pass for any resit which takes place. Endpoint assessment for the hospitality standards from start to finish should take place within 2 months unless exceptional circumstances occur. After each endpoint assessment, the endpoint assessor will thank you and then leave. There is no feedback given. It would be helpful if you could discuss with the apprentice prior to any assessment taking place so that they are not upset by this. Feedback is provided at the end of the endpoint assessment event, only if the apprentice fails. You will be advised of the criteria which have not been met, but via the endpoint assessment team. Once all of the endpoint assessments have taken place and final assessment occurs, the professional discussion is completed. At least 20 days later, you will then be advised of the final outcome for the apprentice. Thank you for listening. If you have any further questions about the EPA process or indeed the Hospitality Gateway process, then please do email amelia.bodle@cityandguilds.com. Many thanks.